I was just really miserable and in a really negative environment. So I was like, well, I can't control all this random crazy stuff that's happening. So I'm going to go vegan and start going to the gym and, start doing all these things to really just take care of myself and my body. And I was going to like yoga classes, just doing a lot of stuff. And I think it was over the course of like 6 or 8 months, I lost like 50 pounds, and it's probably I got into the best shape that I had ever been in like my entire life. I had lost weight a couple times before. It was nothing that really like stuck with me. So finally found something that actually worked for me. And in a weird way, it kind of did lead to like my spiritual path that I'm on.
This is the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast. I'm your host, Sean Dustin. Today is September 24th. This is episode 15. If you are returning, welcome back. If this is your first time listening, welcome. This is a personal development variety podcast. I talk to people about bottoms and life struggles and how they got through them. In between those episodes, I throw in things that I'm interested in or have guests on that can help me with what I'm going through or don't understand about where I'm at and how I got there. I'm still trying to figure out where my sweet spot is in a publishing schedule and how to kind of blend that in with my current schedule for work in my personal life. I started out as a weekly show, then moved to a bi-weekly show, and I'm afraid at the end of the day, this thing's going to end up being a monthly show until I iron out some of my commitments and current things that I'm engaged in my work life and in my personal life. So if you're still sticking with me through this period, man, I appreciate it. If you need something a little bit more consistent in your life to listen to, hey, I understand that as well. If you've been following my episodes and you know that in November I will be running to get elected into a junior business agent position in my union. Planning this campaign has been really eating up a lot of my time and attention lately. It's a really important election for my union. It will decide if the local is ready to start bringing in the next generation of leaders, younger people with fresh ideas and innovative thinking. In 2019, there have been quite a few labor strikes in many different industries. Hopefully the rest of the country is watching as some of the big industries, like the auto industry, with 46,000 United Auto Worker members, are on strike right now at General Motors plants around the country. This is one of the biggest strikes in that industry since the 1970s. In the healthcare industry, a union coalition representing 80,000 Kaiser Permanente members is set to walk out on October 14th. This would be the biggest strike in this country since the Teamsters in the 1997 against the United Parcel Service. The reason why I mention those two strikes are the U.S., well, I think the world in general is kind of waking up to being tired of corporations and big interests and all their profits that they're making, but they're not, the cost of living and the wage increases don't keep up. So as we're watching the 1% continue, the wealth to continue growing, we see the middle class continuing to shrink, and it become more difficult to live everyday life when inflation is rising, wages aren't. Well, they're not keeping up with the cost of inflation. So something's got to give, and hopefully the country is paying attention, where they start, realizing that, hey, man, you guys need to band together and form a union and start fighting these corporations that you're working for better wages, for, conditions, better conditions, working conditions, more fair division of wealth. The worker and the corporation, it's a symbiotic relationship. Without one, you don't have the other. Without the other, you don't have that. You need to have the worker in order to produce the products. If you don't have the worker, you're not producing the products. So, it's hand in hand, and it needs to be a little bit more equally distributed. Anyway, so today's guest is Whitney Levesque. Well, she hosts a podcast called Space Witch Podcast where she talks about astrology, metaphysics, stuff like that. And she also shared a little bit of some of the struggles that she's had in her life. So without further ado, let's get to the show. What's up? This is the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast. I'm your host, Sean Dustin. Today we have Whitney from the Space Witch podcast here to explain to us a little bit about astrology and some of her life. So say hi, Whitney.
Hi. Thanks for having me on the show.
You're welcome. Do you have any like a comeback type story or a bottom or anything like that you want to touch upon? Or
I have like a lot, but it's hard because like originally when you messaged me, like I was nervous because like there's a bunch of stuff that like comes to mind because I'm only 23, but I feel like I've been through like so much, and it's hard to kind of speak about a lot of it because I don't like, it's easy for me to talk about stuff and to blame other people or to kind of throw some people sort of under the bus or make them look bad, which is why I was like so nervous to do this. But I have like a lot of stuff. I think the main thing I could probably talk about without, speaking negatively of anyone, it's probably like, so a couple of years ago, I actually dropped like 50 pounds, and I've like always been a super overweight kid. And I know that's kind of unrelated to like what I do now, but in a weird way, it's kind of related. Like, I grew up being like a chubby kid, and I dealt with that for like years. And it wasn't actually until I want to say it was like, let's see, it's 2019, 19, 18, 17, I think 2016 or 2017, my whole life kind of got like flipped upside down. I had just graduated high school. I was in college at the time, and my parents actually split up, and that kind of like hit me like a ton of bricks. And I kind of just had to turn my whole life around really fast. I had to move out when I wasn't really ready, and it kind of brought me into not the best living situation, to put it lightly. I'm really thankful for it looking back with the way everything worked out. Yeah, it just put me in a really tough spot. And my way to cope with that was to basically just take really good care of myself, which that sounds like, it should be the obvious thing that people do, I guess. But I was just really miserable and in a really negative environment. So I was like, well, I can't control all this random crazy stuff that's happening. So I'm going to go vegan and start going to the gym and start doing all these things to really just take care of myself and my body. And I was going to like yoga classes, just doing a lot of stuff. And I think it was over the course of like 6 or 8 months, I lost like 50 pounds. And it's probably I got into the best shape that I had ever been in like my entire life. I had lost weight a couple times before. It was nothing that really like stuck with me. So I finally found something that actually worked for me. And in a weird way, it kind of did lead to like my spiritual path that I'm on. But as far as astrology goes too, like I've been into astrology since I was like 15 or 16 years old. I got like kind of more into it like after like my parents' divorce and having to move out and all that stuff.
Yeah, divorces are tough, man, especially when you're younger. Mine was really young, so I just really didn't understand it at all. And so it sort of, I guess I internalized it and blamed myself or something, I don't know, but I took it pretty difficult. But I mean, it probably would have been better if I was a little bit older. But as far as like the weight loss thing, I can totally relate to that because I've always kind of, after I got off drugs and, started living life normally, the weight just kind of, because you use food or you're just not, it's,
Yep.
it's so easy to just, when you get busy doing stuff, it's really easy to just go hit Taco Bell or go hit this place because, by the time you get home, it's like, God, man, I don't want to do all that. And it just becomes an excuse, and you just eat.
Yeah.
And I like to eat, man, and I like sugar. Sugar is great. It's the devil, but it's so good.
Oh yeah, I'm right there with you on that for sure. Yeah, I was just gonna say it's so easy to use food as like a coping mechanism, which that was something like I personally learned like really early on in life because and I don't want to sound like I'm blaming anyone for me gaining weight at like a really young age or anything because that's not what I'm trying to do, but I just feel as though I kind of learned to sort of like eat my feelings when I was really young because I just remember like always like being a kid, like a really little kid. And like, whenever I'd cry or get upset, like people would like give me cookies or M&Ms and M's and like cook like, just all this junk food. And, I grew up in like a really kind of I mean, it wasn't always bad, but it was a tumultuous kind of living situation. And all my siblings, like I'm the youngest of four kids, and all my siblings are at least like 10 plus years older than me. And so even though like I am not an only child, I kind of grew up like an only child. And so like, I had friends and like people I hung out with and like, of course, like, my family was around some of the time, but I feel like I just spent a lot of time alone growing up and it was really hard. Like I get in my head a lot. And so it was really hard to sort of deal with like a lot of like the feelings and things I was going through, especially throughout like middle school and high school and all that. And so like food was just something I had used to cope and I had learned to do that from a really early age. So it's kind of like where it all started, I guess.
Well, I guess the good thing is that you're figuring it out at 23 versus me that started figuring it out at 30. What was it? 35 or 33 or something like that. And after, prison and all kinds of crazy stuff. Yeah, I finally ended up getting it. I think that most people, like especially our parents, or mine at least, yours are probably the same. You're 23. I mean, yeah, age is nothing but a number, man. It really is. It's about experiences and I mean, I do kind of like life coaching and stuff like that when from people that haven't really experienced anything. I don't understand that. But I mean, I get it.
Yeah.
And I applaud your ambition, but please go out, get some experience, come back in 10 years and then let's talk about it, because you have, if you want to be a life coach, you have to have experienced life, not just, been out of the house for, 3, 4, 5 years and, barely, don't even have a career yet, or, it just doesn't make sense to me. But I mean, it's great for trying, but you got to go get some experience and then come back to it.
Got to build your resume a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. But on with losing weight, I did keto, and it was, I guess, I think being in the moment, because we all have moments where we shine, right? We all have moments when we pick up something and we just like go all in on it and we super focus on it, and we achieve our goals and we get to the point where we want to. But with weight loss and food, it's hard. All right. It's hard you can get there, but staying there and keeping it that way and sustaining it is the most difficult part. And I think that
it really is.
Yeah. I think that our parents, they followed whatever it was that they were being told, by the media, by the news, that food pyramid that got flipped upside down now. And it's completely opposite of the way that it was, when I was growing up.
Yeah.
And when I started realizing that, and because I got into keto and that seemed to work better for me. I mean, I've done other diets and that one was the one that worked the best for me, but it was, after like researching stuff and realizing like, God, the way that we're eating is just horrible. The standard American diet. I mean, that's what's killing people. And I think it was a time when there was a rash of people in my life that started coming up with cancer, and they were all around the same age, about 5-10 years older than me. And I was like, damn, man, what's going on? I mean, and then I really started, looking in other areas, and it's like, God, man, it's got to be the food. And I'm into conspiracy stuff. You know what I mean?
Wait a second.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm into
No,
conspiracy
like,
stuff, and whenever I started thinking about it, I'm like, well, maybe this is a conspiracy. They're trying to, yeah, that's what they're doing. They're trying to they're trying to kill us slowly with the food, and we'll never know. It takes 30 years.
yeah.
You know what I mean? And no one's gonna ever
Right.
know. That's the perfect way to kill someone.
Oh man. I don't know. Do you watch that show, Always Sunny in Philadelphia?
Oh, I've watched it before when it first came out, but honestly, I've unplugged from most mainstream media. So the things that I watch now are like YouTube documentaries, some Netflix, and YouTube TV. and the YouTube TV is only just because I have a daughter that I co-parent, and so I have to have like cartoon stuff for her when she comes over.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, the way you're talking about those conspiracies, I'm like, people use it in memes and stuff all the time, but there's like an image out there and it's Charlie Day from Always Sunny, and he's got like all these things like tacked up on the wall, and like it's just really funny. But every time people start talking about like conspiracy theories or something, I just think of that meme. But
yeah, well, unfortunately, a lot of the stuff that goes on out there, I mean, there's a reason why people are saying that, there's truth to a lot of these conspiracies. And when they throw theory out there, that just puts the crazy capital on it. You know what I mean? Oh, you're one of those you're one of those crazies that think that everything is, this or that. And it's just really easy for a lot of people who aren't, that have their lives the way that they want them. They're going to their job. They're on the hamster wheel. They've got their things, and they know where they're going on vacation this year, and they're just basically on a loop. You know what I mean? This is what I do. This is what I do. This is what I do. And for them to think anything else outside of that just kind of would ruin whatever it is that they've already got going. So they don't want to like throw any I don't know, like monkey wrenches in their own program, because they've got this trajectory and it's on autopilot.
Yeah, and unfortunately, like people are just they just really are creatures of habit. Like we get into these routines and these cycles. Oh shoot, can you hear me still?
Yeah, I got you.
Okay, sorry, my mic like cut out for a second there. Yeah, and like I mean, I'm like a really like weird person. Like I have a lot of different interests, and that's not me trying to be like, look at me, I'm a snowflake or anything like that. But my favorite thing is like talking about like astrology and metaphysics, and even like health and like different diets and all that stuff. And even just like I'm vegan, like that's something that works for me. And, talking to people about some of this stuff, it's like, it's so interesting because a lot of the stuff, like people just can't wrap their minds around it, or like, they just don't understand like how these different ideas and concepts could like possibly work. And I mean, a part of me, like, I love like educating people. That's why I have my own podcast, because I just love to teach and talk about things that I know about. But it's really interesting, like when I try to talk to someone and it's like, I can tell it's just like not getting through because, people just kind of like to live in their own little bubble.
Yeah, they aren't active listening. They're actively thinking about what they want to say after you finish talking to rebut what you're putting out there.
Yeah. And unfortunately too, like, I mean, I don't even know if I should say this, but I really don't love the way like our current education system is set up like in the US right now, because like I find that the way they teach things, it's just memorization, it's information in and information out, and a lot of people don't really know how to like actually think about things. This was actually something that I really started kind of getting into after my parents divorced and I moved and all that stuff. I did a lot of like soul searching during that time, and it was during that time that I was personally introduced to a lot of new and different concepts. Like a lot of my beliefs changed and my perspective changed, and the way I kind of see everything changed. And yeah, a lot of people just don't actually know how to think or think logically, like actually logically. I work right now, like my regular job is like in customer service and all that. And, it's interesting. Like I'm a manager too. So, I have to train people and teach them how to do things all the time. And it's crazy to see that like, people just can't always sort of like put the pieces together. Like people just don't know how to actually think, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like critical thinking skills, like how to think
exactly.
yourself out of trouble or think yourself out of a situation, by common sense and deduction, which common sense really isn't so common anymore.
No. Or even just using, basic logic and reasoning is another thing I run into a lot. Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, too, the baby boomer generation, I just found this out last night, actually. I didn't know this, but apparently the baby boomer generation is like the largest generation of like the current ones that we have now, which makes sense. I was doing some astrology research on like the different, like there's slower moving planets in astrology and they're known as like the generational planets. And so I was doing some research last night for like one of my podcast episodes. And I found that out and thought it was pretty interesting.
Yeah, the baby boomers are basically, those are the ones that just kind of like, if the Brokaw or whoever that guy was, Ted Koppel or Tom Brokaw or one of those, world news guys, if it came out of his mouth at 6:00 when they were sitting down to watch, to eat dinner and watch the news, that's it. That's gospel. That's the way it is. And that's how they looked at everything. If it came from the government, then it must be true. Hindsight now, you see what our government's capable of doing to its own population. So, I mean, I don't trust anything that they have to say, even with all this silly stuff going on with, the Democratic thing, the debates and stuff that were happening last night. And I'm not going to get into politics. That's just kind of, but I mean, it's one of those things where, I mean, it's just like everybody is still, just parroting, what they think everybody wants to hear. And nobody's really talking about the main issues like, hey, what are we going to do about these term limits for congressmen and senators, which is the major problem, getting all these people out of here that know how to manipulate the system and cater it towards, lobbyists and fattening their own pockets. If you're a politician, there's no reason why you should be getting rich. You're not there to get rich.
Yeah.
You're there to serve the people. Right. You go there, you do your time, and then you're supposed to go back home. That's the way it should be. That's all I'm going to say about that. Sorry.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your astrology stuff, because I like astrology, and I'm not really into it, but I mean, sometimes when I see Sagittarius pop up, I'll like chime in and go, "Ooh, what are you saying about me now?" And a lot of the stuff is kind of true about my sign and just the sign in general. Like, I don't know anything about the other stuff that goes into it, like your moon's in here or you're on the cusp of this or that. I tried to read into it before. I just wasn't ready to receive it at the time, I guess, or,
Yeah.
But I definitely want to know about it. So give me your spiel. What's your podcast about? What do you enjoy doing, and who are you?
So there's a lot I can say about astrology. So basically, I got into astrology originally when I was like 15 or 16 years old. I had a huge crush on this kid all throughout high school. I was like low-key like obsessed with him. He was a Scorpio. He was someone I ended up being really good friends with in high school. And it all kind of started there. Like, I was just kind of like your typical like boy crazy like teenage girl. So it kind of it went from like having a crush on one guy to like, anytime I had a crush on someone, I would be looking up like stuff about their sign and, figuring out what their birthday is and like just Googling like Virgo and Scorpio compatibility or like all that stuff. And it was a while before I was I hate to say it, but I was on Tumblr. And I came across someone's blog where they talked about astrology on there. And I found out that you have all these planets in your chart and that you have more going on besides just your sun sign. And now your sun sign is just like the day you were born. So like for you, like you were saying, like you're Sagittarius, that's just the day you were born. That's just scratching the surface, really. Which is why, too, like a lot of people will read their horoscope or read stuff about their sign and they'll be like, well, this doesn't resonate with me. Or they'll say stuff like, oh, well, this is just really general or this is really vague, blah, blah, blah. Um, and so like the whole thing is just a lot of people aren't aware. Like you have a moon sign, you have a rising sign, you have a Venus sign, a Mars sign, Mercury sign, you have an ascendant, you have a midheaven. Like there's so much going on, but on top of all that. And so for me, it all started off with I I looked up my natal chart and I found out I was an Aquarius rising. And so I was like, okay, cool. What does that mean? So I had read all the stuff about Virgos before because Virgo is my sun sign. I like at first it was kind of like an ego boost. Like I would read it and be like, oh yeah, I'm a Virgo. I'm so neat and organized and I'm a perfectionist. And like, but at the same time, I was kind of like in denial because I didn't really feel as though like all those traits really resonated with me. Like, yeah, I'm a Virgo, but I'm actually really messy. I'm not organized at all. Although I do have like a lot of Virgo traits. Like right now, like I'm talking a lot. Like I'm a very talkative person. That's a general Virgo trait. I am a perfectionist. I can be really like fussy or picky at times. But anyways, going back to what I was saying, I found out I was an Aquarius rising. And so I looked up Aquarius rising and I came across this YouTube video, which was done by this girl named Alyssa Sharp. Alyssa Sharp. Wow, sorry. And so I listened to her video about Aquarius rising. And that's kind of like what really sold me on it because I was like, oh my God, like that is my personality to a T. So, like, Aquarius rising traits are like, you're very humanitarian, you're very kind of different and offbeat. Like, people think you're weird. Like, being weird is like considered like an Aquarius trait or being unconventional in some way. And so, like, all these traits just really kind of fell in line for me, especially like another common Aquarius rising trait is like being really like rebellious. I'm naturally like a really spiteful kind of a person. Like, I'm kind of like that person where like if someone tells me not to do something, like I almost have to like go do it. I've definitely gotten better with it as I've gotten older because like I've realized it's detrimental and not always probably the right thing to do. Like I've matured in that sense. It's definitely like just something I'm always a little bit like inclined to do, and I question everything. And I don't know. I don't always take like people can tell me something, but I always have to kind of go do it myself to like actually have an opinion about it because I just find like people's opinions to be like kind of unreliable. So yeah, that's kind of where it all started. Yeah. Is there anything else I need to mention? I kind of forgot about what the rest of your question was.
So yeah, it was basically, just give me the intro to astrology. And then you also got into some metaphysical stuff. I mean, are you a believer in the law of attraction and how, we were talking about this before I cut you off and said, oh, we're not recording. And but basically about law of attraction and how, I think it's quantum physics plays a part in that too, how something can have energy and be way far away and still I'm going to screw this up. I always do. I never get something I'm trying to explain that I know kind of a little bit about to people. I end up screwing it all up. But you understand what I mean, right?
No worry. Yeah. No, I got you. Yeah. So I totally believe in law of attraction. It's actually something I just started getting into in like within the last year or so. I talk a little bit about it on my podcast. I just put out an episode a couple weeks ago called like How to Create Your Dream Life, where I talk about the steps to basically attract whatever you want into your life. And yeah, it totally works. It's not always easy, I think, because the whole point of it is like, you have to raise your vibrations, which means like you have to have like a positive outlook and, not get into like really kind of like cranky, I hate everything kind of a mood. Yeah, no, it takes work, but it definitely works.
I think like when I think of laws of attraction, so I mean I'm a firm believer in this, and I think it's like with anything. So when you are really into something, let's say for you it was astrology, for me it was podcasting. All right, so it was something that I listened to a lot before I decided to do one, for at least about a year and a half. Got a lot out of it. experienced it, and in a way that kind of affected me and made me want to go to action. And a lot of, I think a lot of attraction is when you start putting so much energy into something and you're constantly thinking about it, and it's like it's always on your mind, and you're always thinking about, how can I do this, how can I do that, how can I do this, how can I do this. You're constantly talking about it, you're talking about it, you're talking about it, you're talking about it. Everybody you talk to, it's like boom, 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 and before you know it, it's like you're stirring up a pot. You know what I mean? And then all that pot goes out. And if you know that about yourself, because I've done this quite a bit, you're hyper aware of the opportunities that are coming back at you. So if you're not in that mode, you know what I mean? A lot of these opportunities you're missing because you're not in alignment. Yeah, you're not in alignment with what it is that you're trying to do. So an opportunity may be thrown at you, and it just misses you because your receiver isn't cast far enough out there to where you can see all of this stuff coming in. But when you are in line with it, opportunities are popping up all over the place, and it's just a matter of you reaching out and grabbing which one you want. And that whole process in itself opens the door for certain things. Like I've had some opportunities that have popped up that may be pretty good for me, but it was because I'm hyper focused on this whole podcast thing. To the point where I've done 5 guest spot or 3 guest spots and 2 interviews in one day. Because I'm just like, oh, this is so fun, man, because it gives me a chance to talk to all kinds of different people. I mean, how else would I be talking to a 23-year-old in, like regular everyday life? I have nothing in common with a 23-year-old. You know what I mean? So the chances that I would actually spark up a conversation with a 23-year-old, like if I'm at a store or somewhere else out there, it would end up being like, gee, you get away from me, creep. Why are you talking to me? Are you trying to hit on me or something? Are you a dirty old man? You know what I mean? I'm 45.
Oh my God.
It's so, I mean, really those opportunities aren't.
I mean, to be fair though, I have had guys come up to me in the grocery store that were like probably around my age, if not a little bit older. And I'm not gonna lie, it gets a little creepy regardless. But yeah.
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying. But with podcasting,
no, I get what you're saying.
I can talk to you, and we're talking about like cool shit that interests both of us, and you know what I mean. If there was no numbers, put to our names, as far as ages go, I mean, who would know other than the fact that you sound, your voice sounds a little bit younger, but other than that, shit. I think it's pretty cool, man. Podcasting puts you with people that you would never, probably in your normal life talk to.
Yeah, no, I've met so many really cool people through podcasting, and I didn't really expect it. Like, I mean, so like my podcast is mostly like a solo cast, like, so like when I started doing interviews and stuff, it was really cool and really interesting. And yeah, I've made like so many friends, and I think what I really enjoy, cause like as someone who like makes podcasts, I'm also a huge like podcast listener, which I'm sure you can kind of like relate to. So like, I love that, like I get to meet all these people, but in addition to that, I also get like new podcasts to listen to. And so like, I really enjoy doing that because like all these people have like really good podcasts. Like I've listened to, your podcast, because I always listen to people's podcasts like before I do anything with them. And, for like interviews and stuff. And, like I really enjoy listening to your podcast. Like I'm excited for you that you're actually like doing this and you're getting all these people on the show. I have like another friend who was on my show not too long ago. Her name was Sarah Schuster. She has a podcast called Pending Seeds, which is all about her like homesteading and stuff and, working on her farm. And she's so, so cool. And like, I was so happy to have her on my podcast, but like, I also like love listening to her podcast. So it's really cool, like making all these connections for sure.
Yeah. And the podcast community in itself, I mean, you're on those message boards or those Facebook groups, and it's like, dude,
I love those.
Everybody is helping everyone. I've never been a part of anything like that in a Facebook group. Usually it's like chaos and and like, I don't know, definitely not like that, and so it's just awesome. And the crazy thing
Right.
is like, even today, like, I'm at work and somebody hit me up on Messenger, and they're like, "Hey man, this is great, dude. I really enjoy your podcast. Thank you for doing this. And, you're inspiring me to want to do what I want to do." And then I'd say, "Hey man, whatever you want, you need help, anything I can do to help further you and where you're trying to go, man, just let me know." Cause I think it's great, because you can't, a lot of people get stuck in the process, I think, of podcasting, because it sounds like a great idea. Everybody wants to do it.
Yeah.
But when they start thinking about how the steps that they need to take to do it, it becomes so overwhelming. And I understand that quite a bit, because I get caught up in the process sometimes, and I just start thinking about the end of it, and I'm like going, "Oh my God, it's so far to get there."
Yeah, no, it's really daunting. For me though, so before I was podcasting, I was running a vegan food blog. And so, because in addition to astrology, like, I love to cook, and I really enjoyed vegan cooking because I just love food. And so, I love vegan food, and I really enjoyed cooking vegan food because I really like the challenge of, like, okay, how do I take this dish and make it delicious, but also not put any like animal products in it? I was doing that for a while, and then the website's still up. It's called fulllife.com, and I have all my recipes on there, but I haven't updated it in like almost a year, because I just found that, like, I was putting too much time and money and energy into it, and I wasn't getting anything back. And I might resurrect it at some point. I don't know. It was just weird. I was literally at work one day, and I was talking to someone about astrology, and I realized, like, I talk about astrology all the time. I should just make a podcast where I can talk about it. And then anyone who wants to listen to me rant about this stuff can just go and listen to it. And so, like, for me personally, like, it was really daunting and kind of like intimidating to do a podcast. But at some point, I kind of just, I was actually listening to another podcast where someone was saying, done is better than perfect. And so that's kind of when I decided to just, like, push all my perfectionist tendencies aside. And I just, got a mic, got my, little iPhone earpods or whatever, and, downloaded Audacity. And I was like, I'm just going to record something and see what happens. And I'm like, I'll just learn as I go, and, I'll just do this. And I found that podcasting was for me anyways, was so much easier to just do than, like, food blogging, where it's like, you have to test all the recipes and get all the ingredients and then take pictures and post them. And it's just like a whole thing. But no, podcasting is, I think people just, like, everyone's like naturally like a little bit insecure. And so I think when we think about putting ourselves out there in some way, we get, we're like our own worst critics. Like, we're like, am I going to have anything good to say? What if people don't like my voice? Maybe people will think it's stupid, or, whatever. And so I don't know, for me personally, like, I'm really creative. Like, I have to be doing something, and, I need to find stuff to do that's like actually fulfilling. Like, I've been at the same job for like 5 years, and, like, there's parts about my job that I love. Like, I love working with the people I work with, and I love teaching people and, helping them kind of get the footing of the job. But it's definitely not something I want to do for the rest of my life. And so, like, whether it's blogging or podcasting, like, I just have to be doing something. And I think through trial and error, like, I personally have just kind of learned, like, you just got to do it. And if, people are going to say stuff regardless, but, you never know. Sometimes it's the opposite, Like, I've gotten so much positive feedback from my podcast, and I'm really thankful for it.
Yeah, well, thank you for the compliment, and thank you for downloading and listening to mine. I
Of course.
I agree, man. It's something that you just, you got to just do it, because everybody's podcast is different. Even though there's a bunch that are like mine that talk about different, comeback stories, or, inspirational stuff, or, there's quite a few of them out there, but everybody kind of has their own spin on it. And there's still plenty of room to grow. I mean, we have, I don't know how many people are in the world, but they all, except, a few countries, have access to the internet and can listen to this stuff. And it's crazy that other people in
Yeah.
other countries really probably like listening to stuff from over here. And vice versa. I mean, there's stuff in the UK that I've listened to that's interesting. The world is getting really small, in terms
Yeah.
of our reach to it.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny, like I think one of the best pieces of advice that I've gotten is like there could be a million food bloggers or uh podcasters out there or whatever. And, the thing that ultimately is always going to set you apart is you. Like, there's no one out there that's exactly like you. Like, yeah, you and someone else might talk about the same thing, but someone might like your personality better than someone else's personality, or like no one can replicate that. And as far as the internet goes, yeah, like everything is, we're so connected now. It's crazy. It's weird. I don't know if you ever like sit down and like look at like all the analytics and stuff for your podcast, but I did that the other day, and I was really surprised to see that, I have a lot of listeners in California and a lot of listeners in Germany, and like I have a couple in Malaysia and Poland and like all these like random countries, and it's mind blowing to think that like someone all the way in Germany is listening to me talking about astrology or whatever.
Yeah, I look at the analytics quite a bit, and it gives me, because a lot of people don't. I don't know if you experience this with yours, but a lot of people don't do the reviews and rate. Just because I guess a lot of people don't listen to it on iTunes, and so it doesn't. I don't know, man. That whole deal, I kind of stopped paying attention to it, but I do look at like how many downloads per episode I'm getting to kind of get a gauge of, okay, well, this episode doesn't have as many and it's been out for X amount of time. So let's go away from that type of stuff and let's focus more on the stuff that's pulling a lot more downloads. So you kind of get a gauge that way, and then you get a gauge also like in the areas that you're hitting, the concentration. So it's fun, man. The whole thing is just fun to me.
Yeah, it is. I kind of think iTunes is going to be kind of like dying out soon, because like I know for me, like I listen to all my podcasts on Spotify. I'm obsessed with Spotify actually. And like I've noticed like a lot of my listeners are on Spotify. It's like a 50-50 between Spotify and Apple, but I don't know. I kind of feel like iTunes might kind of be dying out soon, maybe.
Yeah, there's definitely, with the popularity of it, I mean, it's going to start replacing a lot of different stuff. Like you're going to start seeing more podcasts popping up in the mainstream things, and you already are. You're seeing them. News stations now have podcasts. You've got,
oh my god, every celebrity now like has a podcast. It's crazy. I can't listen to any of it either because I don't know about you, but like whenever I see someone who's like already famous and like has a following, I can't even listen to their podcast because like I feel like it's just going to make me super insecure about my podcast, which is kind of silly, I guess. But
well, they're just capitalizing on what they already have, and I mean you can't knock them for it. But I honestly think that like I listen to Joe Rogan, which you probably do. You like Joe Rogan? Because he's definitely not a vegan. And
I've heard of him. I haven't listened to him, which is just going to sound so stupid, but I think I've purposely kind of avoided listening to his podcast because it's like, and I know it's one of the more popular ones that like everyone talks about, and I'm sure it's like good to listen to, but I don't know. I haven't really given it a chance yet.
He's also my age too, so I mean I think it's a generational thing. But yeah, it's I really like podcasts that like new ones, you know what I mean? Like following somebody from the beginning and listening to how they are in their first episode versus, 25, 30 episodes down, how different they are, and they're picking it up. They're getting in their groove. They're more comfortable on the mic. You can just see the evolution of their show. And I think that's awesome, man, because you're growing with them.
Yeah, no, it's so cool. I totally get you on that.
And being just, 100% honest and authentic about your life and your situations. All right. Well, we're at 44 minutes, and let's go ahead and get this to an end. Is there anything you'd like to plug? Any of your social media? Where can people find you? And you know what? Actually, there's one more question that I want to ask. What is your favorite book? All right. If you've read any books, or if you have any books that have helped you kind of like get to where you are or helped you along your path. And then also, what are two of your favorite podcasts that you consume right now?
Oh, okay. It's a tough question. Well, actually, no, the book one isn't. So a really good book that I actually am almost done with. I was actually listening to it on Audible, which is, I don't know if you've heard of it. It's just like an app by Amazon where you can listen to books and stuff. A really good book that I am almost done with right now is called The Body Keeps the Score, which is a whole book about healing from trauma and how trauma affects your physical body. I found recently that book's been really, really helpful to me. Two podcasts that I really like. There's one that I'm really into right now called Enlightened Empaths, which is a spiritual and like metaphysical podcast, which is all about being an empath, which anyone who doesn't know, an empath is basically someone who is very able to it is kind of like what it sounds like. It's someone who's very easily able to empathize with someone or like take on their feelings. So someone who might be very like emotionally like sensitive. That would be like an empath. Another podcast that I really like. Let me look here. I have a lot. Okay.
Yeah, my apps are like that too. I got an iPhone, and so I have them all in a folder, and there's got to be at least 7 or 8 different podcast apps. But in those apps, there's one that I actually use mostly, and I have probably 25 or 30 podcasts because like if I interview somebody most of the time, I'll go and listen to maybe their first episode and then maybe their last one, so I can sort of get an idea of how they have progressed. Unfortunately, I didn't listen to yours. I'm sorry. I will download it. I will download it this evening.
No worries. Okay, so my second favorite podcast, which I had to look, so I listen to so many, but probably my second favorite one right now is Don't Keep Your Day Job. That's a really good one for anyone who's creative and trying to start their own business or anything like that. And it's super motivational and inspiring.
I have a really good one for you if you want something inspiring, and then it talks about that type of stuff and how to actually go about doing things like business wise or otherwise. And it's a guy named Naval, Naval.
Yeah.
I can't remember what his last name is, but his podcast, you just put in Naval and it'll come up.
Yeah.
That's what the name of the podcast is his first name. And he did a tweet storm about, I can't remember how long ago, but it was just a massive.
Is it the Neverland podcast or no? Oh, maybe I'm reading that wrong. Okay, never mind. Continue. Sorry, finish what you're saying.
Yeah. It was it's Naval, and he basically goes through and takes each one of those tweets, and these are tweets that people most of the time you would have to pay for this information. That's how good this information is that he put out there, and people just didn't understand. We're tripping. That's why it went viral like it did on this tweet storm, because the information he was giving out was stuff that people would package up and try to monetize. And so he was just throwing this stuff out there for free. And then he got the podcast, and in each episode of his podcast was explaining each tweet really
That's cool.
an extensive level. And it kind of falls in with what you're talking about. And I've listened to it 2 times, and it's I need to listen to it 3 more times, the whole thing. That's how good the information is in it.
Huh. I'll have to check it out, or send me a link on Facebook or something. Because I'm not seeing it on my thing when I search it, but yeah, no, that sounds really cool.
Yeah, I will. I'll send you something on Messenger for it. So go ahead and plug all your stuff and where people can find you.
Yeah, so you can find my podcast, the Space Witch Podcast, over on Spotify, iTunes, and Podbean. Those are, the main places you can get it right now. And then you can follow me on Instagram over at Space Witch Podcast with no the in the beginning. It's just at Space Witch Podcast. And you can also find my podcast over on Facebook as well. I have a little Facebook page, which is just the Space Witch Podcast. And yeah.
Cool. Well, I thank you for being a guest on this show and sharing with us a little bit about astrology and the like, and some of your history with the weight loss and stuff like that. If somebody were to want to reach out to you and have you do like a chart or a reading, do you do that? Is that something that you do, or you just talk about it?
Yeah, totally. No, I do offer chart readings right now. Like, obviously, I want to have a website set up eventually, so it's a little bit easier. But right now, the way I'm doing it is, if you want a chart reading from me, you can shoot me an email, which is just spacewitchpodcast@gmail.com, with no the in the beginning, just spacewitchpodcast@gmail.com. And so, yeah, just shoot me an email, just put in the subject line like natal chart reading, and just tell me like, hey, I'm looking to get a natal chart reading done. And then I'm going to ask you a few questions, and I'll probably ask like for your full birthday, the time, the exact time you were born, and the location you were born. And all of that is totally private and confidential. I don't share it with anyone. And that's all I need. And then I can calculate your birth chart. And then I'll type out basically my interpretation of all your placements. It's really in depth, and it's probably about like a page or two long, I want to say. Because like I said, there's a lot that goes on in a natal chart. Yeah, that's basically how it works. And yeah.
Well, cool, man. So now you guys know, if you want to have your charts done, natal chart done, then this is your girl right here, the Space Witch Podcast girl. So your real name's Whitney, though, right?
Yes. Okay. Yes, that's correct.
All right. So
thank you for,
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks again. Hold out, hang out for just a second. After I hit, well, actually, I'm not going to hit stop, but so yeah, thank you, Whitney.
Yeah, no worries.
Thank you for listening to the show, and thank you, Whitney, for being a guest. If you want to follow Whitney or find out any of her information, you can go to the show notes and they'll be there. And until this election is over in November and I find out, if my life's going to switch gears and change directions here, this is probably going to turn into a monthly show. I still have 13 interviews to get through and edit. If I can do it faster, I'm going to, but until I kind of know what's happening, that's just the way I'm going to roll right now. If you want to follow me, go to Instagram at nowhere to go but up now. If you would like to email me, anything you want to talk to me about, maybe you want to be a guest on the show, anything that you want to direct at me through email, you can go to nowhere to go but up now at gmail.com. And any of my social media, anywhere that I'm at, go to Instagram, go to my bio, hit the link tree on the bottom. That'll take you to all the places that I'm at. You can even book an interview if you want to be on the show. You can go down there and hit the link tree and hit the book an interview tab. And last, I just want to say thank you. If you've been following me, if you've been listening to my shows, if you've been downloading all of them and supporting me through listenership, I appreciate it. Thank you. And thank you for being patient with me as I struggle through the publishing part of this and trying to, put all the pieces together and turn this into something that you enjoy and I enjoy doing. So I thank you. And until next time, keep it 100, stay true to yourself. Everything else is just noise.